r/pettyrevenge got restraining order with lies, so I exposed the truth. I was sitting in my constitutional law class when campus security walked in. The professor stopped mid-sentence as two officers scanned the lecture hall, their eyes landing directly on me. Every head in the room turned to follow their gaze. "We need you to come with us," the older officer said quietly when he reached my desk. My hand shook as I packed my laptop, feeling 200 pairs of eyes burning into my back. The walk across campus felt like a death march, whispers following us every step of the way. At the security office, they slid a thick stack of papers across the table. "You've been served with a temporary restraining order," the officer explained. "You're to have no contact with Marcus Chen, direct or indirect, and you must stay at least 500 feet away from him at all times." I stared at the documents, my brain refusing to process what I was reading. Stalking. Harassment. Threatening behavior. Page after page of allegations that made me sound like a complete psychopath. According to these papers, I'd been following Marcus for weeks, sending threatening messages, and had allegedly shown up at his dorm at 2 a.m. last Thursday, banging on his door and screaming threats. "This is insane," I whispered. "None of this happened." "None of it." The officer's expression was sympathetic but firm. "You'll have a chance to respond at the hearing next week. Until then, you need to comply with the order or face criminal charges." Walking back to my dorm felt surreal. Marcus and I had dated for 8 months before breaking up 6 weeks ago, and yeah, it hadn't been pretty. He'd been controlling, manipulative, and had this terrifying ability to twist every conversation until I questioned my own sanity. When I finally found the courage to end things, he'd seemed almost relieved. We'd barely spoken since. Now suddenly I'm a stalker? My roommate Jess took one look at my face and immediately pulled me inside. "What happened?" "You look like you've seen a ghost." I handed her the restraining order and watched her expression change as she read. "This says you were at his dorm last Thursday at 2 a.m.? She looked up at me, confused. "But you were here. We watched that entire Marvel marathon, remember? You fell asleep on your desk around 1:30 and I had to wake you up to get you into bed." That's when it hit me. Marcus hadn't just lied, he'd been strategic about it. But he'd made one crucial mistake. I'm an obsessively organized person who documents everything. Call it anxiety, call it paranoia, but I keep receipts, timestamps, and photos of practically my entire life. "Jess," I said slowly, "how good are you with spreadsheets?" Over the next 2 hours, we laid out everything. My location data, credit card receipts, even my meal card swipes from the dining hall. For every single incident Marcus claimed had happened, I had proof I was somewhere else entirely. The threatening texts he'd apparently screenshotted? I pulled up my actual phone records. The times didn't match, and some of the messages were allegedly sent when my phone was completely powered off for a software update. As we worked, rage replaced my initial shock. This wasn't just a lie, it was a calculated attack designed to destroy my reputation and potentially get me expelled. Marcus knew exactly what he was doing, and apparently, he'd convinced our mutual friends to back up his story. But if Marcus wanted to play games with the legal system, he'd picked the wrong person. I didn't just want to beat this restraining order, I wanted to expose every single lie he'd told. Game on. I thought I had everything figured out until I checked my campus email the next morning. There were 17 messages waiting for me, and my stomach dropped as I read the subject lines. "Disappointed in you. Can't believe this is true. Stay away from me." Word had spread faster than wildfire. Somehow, news of the restraining order had leaked across campus, and the story being told was far worse than what was actually in the legal documents. According to the rumors flying around, I'd allegedly slashed Marcus's tires, broken into his dorm room, and sent him death threats detailed enough that campus police were taking it very seriously. None of it was true, but truth didn't seem to matter anymore. The worst message came from Professor Williams, my academic advisor and the woman who'd been helping me apply for law school. "I think it's best if we postpone our meeting scheduled for this afternoon until this situation is resolved. Please understand this is a precautionary measure." My hands were shaking so badly I could barely type a response. This wasn't just about a restraining order anymore, this was about my entire future. Law schools don't exactly welcome applicants with stalking allegations on their record, even false ones. I called my mom, but hung up before she could answer. "How do you explain to your parents that your ex-boyfriend has potentially destroyed your life with a pack of lies?" Instead, I grabbed my laptop and headed to the library, determined to dig deeper into Marcus's claims. That's when I discovered just how thorough his planning had been. Sarah Martinez, my former study partner and someone I'd considered a close friend, had apparently provided a witness statement claiming she'd seen me lurking around Marcus's building multiple times and that I'd asked her weird questions about his schedule. When I pulled up our text history, I found something interesting. She'd asked me about Marcus first, wondering if I knew when he'd be at the gym because she wanted to avoid the awkwardness of running into him after choosing sides in our breakup. I'd simply told her he usually worked out around 6 p.m. Somehow, that had become me pumping her for information about his whereabouts. Jake Morrison, another so-called friend, claimed I'd shown him concerning text messages from Marcus and had seemed obsessed and unhinged when discussing the breakup. The truth? I'd vented to Jake exactly once, 3 weeks ago, when Marcus had violated his own no-contact suggestion by commenting on my Instagram posts. Jake had been the one to bring up Marcus in every conversation since, asking invasive questions about our relationship that I'd tried to deflect. As I sat in the library, documenting each distorted truth, I realized Marcus had done something brilliant and terrifying. He'd weaponized normal post-breakup conversations. Every mutual friend who'd engaged with me about the relationship had apparently been taking notes, ready to reframe innocent interactions as evidence of obsessive behavior. My phone buzzed with a text from Jess, "Emergency. Come back to the dorm now." I found her pacing our small room, laptop open on her desk. "It gets worse," she said without preamble. "I was checking your Instagram to screenshot posts that could help establish your timeline, and look at this." She turned the screen toward me. Someone had been commenting on my photos, not recent ones, but pictures from months ago, back when Marcus and I were still dating. The comments were crude, sexual, and made it look like I was desperately trying to get his attention. The username looked like a spam account, but the IP tracking app Jess had installed showed the comments were coming from our campus network. "He's still actively building his case against you," she said quietly. "Even after filing the restraining order, he's creating new evidence to support it." I stared at the screen, feeling something cold settle in my chest. This wasn't just revenge, it was systematic destruction. Time to start building my own case. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Marcus's smug face or imagined more lies spreading across campus like poison. By 6 a.m., I was back at my laptop, diving deeper into the evidence he'd supposedly collected against me. What I found made my blood run cold. Marcus hadn't just convinced our mutual friends to lie, he'd been planning this for weeks, maybe longer. Going through my cloud storage, I found photos I'd completely forgotten about. Screenshots of text conversations we'd had back in March, months before our breakup, where he'd asked seemingly innocent questions about my daily routine, my class schedule, where I liked to study. At the time, I thought he was being sweet, trying to coordinate our time together better. Now I realized he'd been mapping out my entire life, probably so he could later claim I was the one stalking him through places I'd always frequented. The most chilling discovery came when I cross-referenced the timestamps on his alleged evidence with my old calendar. 3 of the incidents he claimed happened were on days when he'd actually texted me first. Not only that, but I'd saved screenshots of him asking me to meet him at 2 of those exact locations. He'd been setting up scenarios where my presence could later be framed as unwanted stalking. Jesus Christ, I whispered, staring at a text from February where Marcus had asked me to bring him coffee at the library because he was stressed about midterms. According to his restraining order filing, that same day was when I'd allegedly appeared unexpectedly at his study location, acting possessive and refusing to leave. My hands were trembling as I documented everything, but then my laptop screen went black. Not sleep mode, completely black, with a strange grinding sound coming from inside. I frantically pressed the power button, but nothing happened. The laptop that contained weeks of evidence gathering, all my organized timelines, and the screenshots proving Marcus's lies had just died. No, I muttered, trying every trick I knew. Nothing worked. I called the campus IT help desk, but they couldn't see me until Monday, 2 days after my restraining order hearing. The timing felt too convenient to be coincidental, especially when I remembered that Marcus was a computer science major with a work-study job at the very same IT department. Paranoia crept up my spine. Was I being watched? Had he somehow accessed my laptop remotely? I'd been so focused on gathering evidence that I hadn't considered he might be monitoring my digital activities. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Stop digging or things get worse. This is your only warning. My heart hammered against my ribs. I immediately called campus security, but when I tried to show them the message, it had vanished from my phone entirely. The officer looked at me with barely concealed skepticism, the same expression everyone had been wearing since news of the restraining order spread. Are you sure you received a threatening text? He asked carefully. Sometimes stress can make us think. I know what I saw, I snapped, then immediately regretted my tone. Getting defensive would only make me look more unstable. Walking back to my dorm, I felt eyes on me everywhere. Students whispered as I passed, some pointing out right. Someone had apparently posted about the restraining order on YIKYAK, and the anonymous comments were brutal. I was described as psycho ex-girlfriend and stalker bitch, with people sharing supposed inside information about my mental state and past relationships. The social isolation was suffocating, but what terrified me most was the creeping doubt in my own mind. Marcus had always been good at gaslighting, making me question my memories and perceptions. Now, with my evidence mysteriously disappearing and threatening texts vanishing from my phone, I found myself wondering, was I losing my grip on reality? No. I couldn't let him get inside my head again. The hearing was in 2 days, and I still had one advantage Marcus didn't know about. I'd been backing everything up to my mom's cloud storage account since day one. I spent the entire weekend rebuilding my case from my mom's cloud backup, working in the 24-hour computer lab because I didn't trust using any device connected to the campus network. Every few hours, I'd glance over my shoulder, expecting to see Marcus or one of his friends watching me. The paranoia was exhausting, but I couldn't shake the feeling that my every move was being monitored. Sunday night, I finally called my parents. I couldn't put it off any longer. If this hearing went badly, they'd find out anyway when I got expelled. Honey, slow down, my mom said after I'd rushed through the entire story. This boy filed a restraining order based on lies? Complete lies, Mom. And he's turned half the campus against me. I have proof of everything, but nothing. My dad's voice cut in from the speakerphone. We're driving up tonight. You shouldn't face this alone. Dad, you can't. The hearing is tomorrow morning, and it's just a preliminary. Like hell we're staying home while someone tries to destroy our daughter's future. After we hung up, I felt simultaneously relieved and terrified. Having my parents there would help, but it also made everything feel more real, more serious. This wasn't just college drama anymore, this was my life falling apart in real time. I was printing out my evidence packets when Amanda Chin appeared beside the printer. Marcus's older sister, someone I'd actually gotten along with during our relationship. We need to talk, she said quietly, glancing around the empty lab. My stomach clenched. If Marcus sent you to. Marcus doesn't know I'm here. Her voice was strained. Look, I don't know what's going on between you two, but I found something in his room when I helped him move his stuff last week. She pulled out her phone and showed me a screenshot of a group chat I'd never seen before. The participants were Marcus, Sarah, Jake, and 3 other mutual friends. The messages made my blood freeze. Phase 1 complete, TRO filed, Marcus had written. Now we just need to make sure everyone sticks to their stories at the hearing. Remember, consistency is key. Jake had responded, still feels wrong, man. She never actually did half this stuff. She emotionally abused me for months, Marcus replied. This is just evening the score. Besides, it's not like she'll get arrested, just scared straight. Sarah had chimed in, what if she has evidence that contradicts us? Marcus's response made my hands shake. I've been monitoring her digital activity since the breakup. Trust me, I know exactly what she has and doesn't have. Everything's under control. He's been spying on you, Amanda whispered. I don't know how, but he's been tracking your computer usage, your social media, everything. There are more screenshots, him bragging about timing the restraining order to mess up your law school applications. I stared at the evidence, feeling sick. Why are you showing me this? Because what he's doing is psychotic, and I can't watch him destroy someone's life over a breakup. She paused. But I can't testify for you either. He's still my brother, and my parents would disown me if I sided against family. Can you send me these screenshots? She shook her head. He monitors my phone too. But I can tell you that he's planning something for tomorrow's hearing, some kind of surprise evidence that he thinks will guarantee the restraining order becomes permanent. Amanda left me alone in the computer lab, my mind racing. Whatever Marcus was planning, I had less than 12 hours to prepare for it. I pulled up my rebuilt evidence files, but everything felt inadequate now. He'd been steps ahead of me this entire time, controlling the narrative and manipulating evidence. My phone buzzed with a text from my mom, just past the campus sign. Dad's finding parking. We'll be at your dorm in 10 minutes. I'd never been more grateful to see my parents, but as I packed up my papers, one thought kept echoing in my head. If Marcus really had been monitoring everything, he knew exactly what evidence I'd be bringing tomorrow. Which meant he'd already figured out how to destroy it. The hearing was scheduled for 9 a.m., but I was already awake at 5, staring at the ceiling and running through every possible scenario. My parents had stayed at a nearby hotel, and we'd planned to meet an hour early to review my evidence one final time. At 6:30, my phone rang. It was my mom, and her voice was tight with worry. Honey, we have a problem. Someone broke into our hotel room last night. My blood turned to ice. What? Are you okay? We're fine, we were at breakfast when it happened. But they took our laptop bag. The one with all the backup copies of your evidence that we printed last night. I sat bolt upright. Everything? The timeline, the phone records, the screenshots, all of it. They left our other valuables but took only that bag. Her voice cracked. This wasn't random, was it? No, I whispered. It wasn't. I threw on clothes and raced to meet them at the hotel. The police were already there, but they seemed to think it was just an unfortunate coincidence, wrong place, wrong time. The officer taking the report barely looked up when I tried to explain about the restraining order hearing. College towns have a lot of break-ins, he said dismissively. Probably someone looking for electronics to sell. But they only took papers and documents. Ma'am, I understand you're stressed about your legal situation, but not everything is connected to your personal drama. Personal drama. I wanted to scream. My dad put a protective arm around me. We still have the digital copies on the cloud, right? I nodded, but something cold was settling in my stomach. As we drove to campus, I tried logging into my mom's cloud account from my phone. Invalid password, the screen read. I tried again, typing more carefully. Same error. Mom, did you change your cloud password recently? No, why? I tried a third time, and the account locked me out for security reasons. My heart was hammering now. Someone's been in your account. They've changed the password. My mom's face went white. But that's impossible. Nobody knows my passwords. Unless they've been monitoring my computer activity and saw me log in this weekend, I said quietly. We drove the rest of the way in silence, the weight of what was happening settling over us. Marcus hadn't just been playing defense, he'd been systematically destroying every piece of evidence I'd collected. And somehow, he'd managed to track down my parents and steal their physical copies too. At the courthouse, I spotted Marcus immediately. He was dressed in a crisp navy suit, looking every inch the responsible computer science student. His parents flanked him, along with what appeared to be a lawyer, a real one, not the overworked public defender I'd been assigned. But what made my stomach drop was seeing Sarah, Jake, and 2 other friends sitting in the gallery behind him. They all avoided my eyes, but I could see the guilt written across their faces. Whatever lies they'd told in their witness statements, they were here to repeat them under oath. Marcus glanced over and gave me the smallest smirk. In that moment, I realized the true scope of his plan. This wasn't just about getting a restraining order, it was about completely destroying my credibility. When I walked into that courtroom with no evidence, no witnesses, and no way to prove my innocence, I'd look exactly like the unstable stalker he painted me as. All rise for the Honorable Judge Patricia Reynolds. As we stood, I felt the walls closing in. Marcus had outmaneuvered me at every turn, and I was about to face a judge with nothing but my word against his meticulously crafted lies. The hearing was about to begin, and I was walking in defenseless. The hearing started exactly as I'd feared. Marcus's lawyer, a sharp-looking woman in an expensive suit, laid out their case with surgical precision. She presented the restraining order documents like they were gospel truth, walking Judge Reynolds through each alleged incident with timestamps, locations, and witness corroborations. Your Honor, my client has been living in fear for weeks, she stated smoothly. The respondent has demonstrated a clear pattern of escalating stalking behavior that has disrupted not only Mr. Chen's education but his fundamental right to safety on campus. I watched the judge's face as Marcus took the witness stand. He was perfect, voice shaking just slightly, eyes downcast with what looked like genuine trauma. When asked about the night I'd allegedly banged on his door screaming threats, he actually teared up. I was terrified, he said softly. She was yelling things about how I'd ruined her life and that I'd be sorry. My roommate heard everything, he's the one who convinced me to finally report this. The roommate, David Kim, was their next witness. I'd met David exactly twice during our relationship, but he testified with confidence about my erratic behavior and obsessive questions about Marcus's schedule. According to him, I'd been calling their dorm room at all hours and had once followed Marcus to the dining hall, sitting close enough to eavesdrop on his conversations. None of it had happened, but David delivered each lie with conviction. When my public defender stood to cross-examine, it became painfully obvious how outmatched we were. Her questions were basic, unfocused, and Marcus's witnesses had clearly been coached. Every answer they gave was consistent with their written statements, and they all expressed genuine seeming concern for Marcus's well-being. Ms. Patterson, Judge Reynolds finally said, turning to me. You may present your defense. This was it. The moment where I was supposed to produce mountains of evidence proving my innocence. Instead, I stood up empty-handed, my throat tight with panic. Your Honor, I started, then stopped. How do you explain that all your evidence has been systematically destroyed without sounding paranoid and unhinged? My public defender leaned over. Just tell the truth about where you were during the alleged incidents, she whispered. Your Honor, I was never at Mr. Chen's dormitory that night. I was in my room with my roommate watching movies. I had records of my meal card swipes and location data that proved I was nowhere near any of these alleged incidents, but You had records? Judge Reynolds interrupted. Do you no longer have them? The courtroom felt deadly quiet. I could feel Marcus's eyes on me, and I was certain he was enjoying every second of this. Someone broke into my parents' hotel room last night and stole our evidence packet. And my digital files have been compromised. I watched the judge's expression shift to barely concealed skepticism. In the gallery, I heard someone whisper convenient just loud enough for everyone to catch. Marcus's lawyer stood immediately. Objection, Your Honor. The respondent is making serious accusations without any proof. This sounds like a desperate attempt to explain away her lack of evidence. Sustained, Judge Reynolds said crisply. Ms. Patterson, do you have any actual evidence to present, or are we dealing in speculation about mysterious break-ins? My face burned with humiliation. I can call my roommate to testify about my whereabouts. Your roommate who would naturally be motivated to lie for you? Marcus's lawyer interjected smoothly. The hearing was slipping away from me, and I could feel my future crumbling with each passing minute. In the gallery, I spotted a face I hadn't expected, Amanda Chen, Marcus's sister, looking pale and conflicted. Our eyes met briefly, and I saw her glance at her phone, then back at me with an expression I couldn't read. Your Honor, I said desperately, if I could just have a brief recess too. Ms. Patterson, this court has already been very patient with your lack of preparation. Do you have any witnesses or evidence to present now, or shall we proceed to judgment? I stood there, feeling the weight of everyone's stares, knowing that my next words would determine whether I walked out of this courtroom as a free person or as someone legally branded a stalker. And I had absolutely nothing. That's when my phone buzzed. In the dead silence of the courtroom, the sound felt deafening. Judge Reynolds shot me a sharp look, but before she could admonish me about courtroom etiquette, I saw the notification that made my heart skip. Amanda Chen had airdropped me something. With shaking hands, I opened the file. It was a screen recording, video footage of Marcus's phone showing the group chat I'd seen the night before, but this version had timestamps and included more damning messages. Messages where Marcus explicitly detailed how he'd hacked into my cloud storage, coordinated the hotel break-in through a friend, and even discussed planting fake evidence if needed. Your Honor, I said, my voice stronger now, I do have evidence. Digital evidence that was just recovered. Marcus went rigid in his seat. I watched his confident facade crack slightly as his eyes darted to his sister in the gallery. Amanda was staring straight ahead, her jaw set with determination. His lawyer looked confused. Your Honor, the respondent just claimed all her evidence was destroyed. Now she's producing new materials? This is highly suspicious. I'd like to see what Ms. Patterson has, Judge Reynolds said curtly. I approached the bench with my phone, my hand still trembling. As the judge reviewed the screen recording, I watched her expression shift from skepticism to shock to barely contained outrage. The video clearly showed Marcus's phone number, his profile picture, and messages that were timestamped from just hours ago. Mr. Chen, Judge Reynolds said slowly, her voice ice cold. Can you explain why there appears to be digital evidence of you discussing fabricated testimony and illegal surveillance of the respondent? Marcus's lawyer immediately stood. Your Honor, we'd need time to authenticate any digital evidence. Screenshots can easily be fabricated. This is a screen recording, not screenshots, the judge interrupted. And it appears to show criminal conspiracy and perjury. She turned back to Marcus. Mr. Chen, I'm going to ask you directly, did you coordinate false testimony with your witnesses? The courtroom was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. Marcus's face had gone ashen, and I could see sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool temperature. His perfect composure was finally cracking. Your Honor, he stammered, looking desperately at his lawyer. But before he could formulate a response, David Kim, his roommate, suddenly spoke up from the gallery. I can't do this anymore, David said, his voice shaking. None of us actually saw her do those things. Marcus asked us to say we did because he said she was crazy and needed to be stopped, but I never actually witnessed any stalking behavior. The courtroom erupted. Marcus's lawyer was frantically whispering to him while his parents looked mortified. Sarah was crying silently in the back row, and Jake had his head in his hands. Mr. Kim, Judge Reynolds said sharply, are you testifying that you committed perjury in this courtroom today? Yes, ma'am, David whispered. I'm sorry. I thought we were helping Marcus get away from a bad situation, but seeing her up there with no way to defend herself, this isn't right. Judge Reynolds' gavel came down like thunder. This hearing is suspended pending a full investigation into perjury charges and potential criminal conspiracy. Mr. Chen, you are hereby ordered to surrender your passport and remain available for questioning. The temporary restraining order is immediately dissolved. As the courtroom dissolved into chaos around me, I felt my legs give out. My parents rushed forward to catch me as the weight of the last few weeks finally crashed down. But even through my relief, I could hear Marcus's voice rising above the commotion, no longer the composed victim but showing his true colors. This is bullshit. She's the crazy one. She's manipulating all of you. The mask had finally fallen completely off. The next few hours passed in a blur of police interviews and paperwork. Detective Sarah Morrison, no relation to Jake, thankfully, was assigned to investigate what she called one of the most elaborate harassment schemes she'd seen in her 15 years on the force. We'll need your phone, laptop, and any other devices for forensic analysis, she explained as we sat in a small conference room at the courthouse. If Mr. Chen really has been monitoring your digital activity, we'll find the evidence. I handed over my devices willingly, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. But that relief was short-lived. There's something else, Detective Morrison continued, her expression growing serious. The hotel break-in wasn't Mr. Chen's only move last night. We discovered he filed complaints against you with your university's Title IX office, claiming you've been sexually harassing him and creating a hostile environment. My stomach dropped. What? But the restraining order was just dismissed. Title IX operates independently from criminal court, she explained grimly. Even with today's revelations, the university is required to investigate. They've already scheduled a disciplinary hearing for Thursday. 3 days away. I felt the walls closing in again just when I thought I was free. But surely they'll consider what happened today, my mom asked. Detective Morrison shrugged. Universities have their own standards of evidence. Even if the criminal charges get dropped, academic consequences can still apply. And frankly, Title IX cases don't always follow logic. Walking back to campus with my parents, I tried to process this new nightmare. Students were already staring, but now I couldn't tell if it was because of the original restraining order rumors or if news of the hearing's dramatic conclusion had spread. My phone, which Detective Morrison had returned temporarily, buzzed with notifications. Most were supportive messages from people who'd heard about Marcus's lies being exposed. But scattered between them were anonymous texts that made my blood run cold. Just because you won today doesn't mean this is over. Marcus has friends you don't know about. Watch your back. I showed them to my parents, but when we tried to trace the numbers, they all came back to burner phones purchased with cash. He's not done, I said quietly as we reached my dorm. Even with everything that happened today, he's still coming after me. My dad's jaw tightened. Maybe it's time to consider transferring schools. Start fresh somewhere else. No. The word came out harder than I intended. I'm not running away from my entire life because of his lies. This is my school too. But as we said goodbye and my parents headed back to their hotel, I realized how naive that sounded. Marcus might be facing criminal charges, but he still had allies. The Title IX complaint was proof that he wasn't planning to go down quietly. Back in my dorm room, Jess was waiting with a bottle of wine and a concerned expression. I heard what happened at the hearing, she said, pulling me into a hug. David Kim called me. He feels horrible about lying. But there's something else you need to know. She showed me her laptop screen. Someone had created a fake social media account using my name and photos, and had been sending explicit messages to random male students across campus. The account had been active for hours, long enough for screenshots to spread across group chats and anonymous forums. Even when he loses, he wins, I whispered, staring at the fabricated evidence of behavior I'd never engaged in. How is he still doing this while being investigated by police? Because he's smart, Jess said grimly. And he clearly has help. As if summoned by our conversation, someone knocked on our door. I peered through the peephole to see Amanda Chin standing in the hallway, looking nervous and glancing over her shoulder. I need to tell you something, she said the moment I opened the door. About Thursday's hearing. Marcus isn't planning to defend himself, he's planning to destroy you completely before the criminal investigation can proceed. My heart sank. What do you mean? He's been collecting personal information about you for months. Things from before you even dated. Photos, private conversations he recorded without permission, details about your family and past relationships. Amanda's voice was shaking. He's going to paint you as a serial stalker who's targeted multiple people. And some of his evidence involves your high school ex-boyfriend. I felt the color drain from my face. Ryan? From 3 years ago? She nodded grimly. Marcus tracked him down and convinced him to lie about your behavior back then. Ryan's apparently willing to testify that you stalked him too, creating a pattern that supports Marcus's claims. The room spun around me. Ryan and I had ended on good terms, or so I thought. We dated senior year, broken up amicably before college, and I hadn't spoken to him since graduation. Why would Ryan lie about me? Amanda looked uncomfortable. Marcus offered him money. And he may have fabricated some evidence to make his case more convincing to Ryan. Jesus Christ, Jess muttered. How deep does this go? That's when Amanda dropped the real bombshell. Marcus isn't working alone anymore. After today's hearing, his father hired a private investigator and a team of lawyers. They're treating this like a war, not a college disciplinary case. As Amanda left, I sank onto my bed, overwhelmed. I'd won today's battle, but Marcus had escalated this into something far beyond what I could handle alone. And in 3 days, I'd be walking into a Title IX hearing where the rules were different, the standards of evidence were lower, and Marcus would have professional help. Worse, I was starting to realize that even if I survived Thursday's hearing, Marcus would just find new ways to destroy me. This wasn't going to end until one of us was completely defeated. And he had far more resources for a prolonged war than I did. The Title IX hearing was still 2 days away, but by Tuesday morning, it felt like Marcus's new legal team had already won. I woke up to find a formal notice slipped under my dorm room door, not from the university, but from Whitman, Burke & Associates, the law firm his father had apparently hired. Cease and desist from defamatory statements regarding our client Marcus Chin, the letter began. It was 3 pages of legal jargon that basically accused me of orchestrating a malicious campaign of character assassination and threatened to sue me for damages if I continued spreading false narratives about the dissolved restraining order proceedings. I read it twice, my coffee growing cold. They were trying to flip the script, making me the aggressor for telling people the truth about what had happened in court. This is insane, I muttered, showing Jess the letter. They're threatening to sue me for talking about him lying under oath. Can they do that? I honestly didn't know. My knowledge of law came from classes, not real-world experience with high-powered attorneys who specialized in making problems disappear. My phone rang, Detective Morrison. We've hit a snag, she said without preamble. Marcus's devices came back clean. Completely wiped, professional-grade data destruction. And his father's lawyers are claiming the screen recording Amanda provided was fabricated. My heart sank. But David Kim admitted to lying. David's recanting. His family received legal threats yesterday, and now he's claiming he was confused and overwhelmed during the hearing. Says his original testimony was accurate. I slumped against my desk. They got to him. Looks that way. Without the digital evidence or witness cooperation, we don't have enough for criminal charges. I'm sorry. After she hung up, I sat in stunned silence. In less than 48 hours, Marcus's team had eliminated every piece of evidence from yesterday's victory and flipped the key witness. Meanwhile, I was sitting in my dorm room with a cease and desist letter and a Title IX hearing that now looked impossible to win. That afternoon, things got worse. My academic advisor, Professor Williams, called an emergency meeting. I've received some concerning information, she said carefully as I sat in her office. About your conduct both during and before your relationship with Mr. Chin. She slid a manila folder across her desk. Inside were printouts of the fake social media account Jess had shown me, but also things I'd never seen before. Screenshots of text conversations that looked like they were from my phone number, sent to random male classmates with increasingly sexual content. Photos that appeared to be taken by me of guys around campus without their knowledge. These were provided by Mr. Chen's legal team as evidence of a pattern of inappropriate behavior, Professor Williams continued. Several students have now come forward saying you've been harassing them for months. I stared at the fabricated evidence, my hands shaking. None of this is real. I never sent these messages or took these pictures. The metadata appears authentic. Phone numbers, timestamps, geolocation data, it's all there. Because he's a computer science major. I said desperately. He knows how to fake digital evidence. That's why his devices were wiped clean when the police investigated. Professor Williams's expression grew more concerned, not about Marcus, but about me. I understand you're under stress, but these accusations of elaborate digital manipulation. She paused delicately. The University Counseling Center has excellent resources for students who are struggling. I realized with growing horror that my insistence on Marcus's technical abilities was making me sound paranoid and delusional. His team had found the perfect strategy, create evidence so sophisticated that claiming it was fabricated made me look unstable. Professor Williams, I know how this sounds, but... The Title IX office has asked that you refrain from attending classes until after Thursday's hearing, she interrupted gently. For everyone's safety and comfort. Walking back to my dorm, I felt like a ghost haunting my own life. Students I'd known for 2 years now crossed the street to avoid me. Someone had written psycho on my door in permanent marker that the custodial staff hadn't managed to completely remove. That evening, my parents called with more bad news. The private investigator contacted your high school, my mom said, her voice tight. He's been asking your old teachers about your behavioral patterns and relationship history. What did they tell him? Most refused to comment, but apparently he's found a few people willing to talk. Your junior year English teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, mentioned the time you wrote that creative writing piece about obsessive love. I remember the assignment. We were studying Gothic literature, and I'd written a short story from the perspective of someone fixated on an unrequited crush. It was fiction, inspired by Poe and Bronte, but taken out of context. They're building a psychological profile, I whispered. Making it look like I've always been this way. My dad's voice was strained. There's more. They contacted Ryan. My stomach dropped. Amanda had warned me about this, but hearing it confirmed felt like a physical blow. He's agreed to testify at Thursday's hearing, Dad continued. Claims you used to drive by his house and that you called him obsessively after your breakup. That's not true. We ended things amicably, and I maybe drove past his neighborhood twice because it was on the way to Sarah's house. But even as I said it, I could hear how weak it sounded. Marcus's teen was taking normal teenage behavior and reframing it as evidence of stalking. Worse, they were retroactively contaminating relationships and memories that had nothing to do with Marcus. After my parents hung up, I sat in my darkened dorm room, feeling the weight of Marcus's strategy settling over me like a suffocating blanket. This wasn't just about winning Thursday's hearing anymore. They were systematically destroying my entire history, making it impossible for anyone to believe I was capable of healthy relationships. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Thursday's just the beginning. By the time we're done, no one will remember you as anything but the crazy girl who couldn't let go. I started typing a response, then stopped. Engaging would only give them more evidence of my unstable behavior. Instead, I took a screenshot and added it to my growing folder of harassment, evidence that no one seemed willing to take seriously. 2 days. I had 2 days to figure out how to fight a team of professional lawyers and private investigators with resources I couldn't even imagine. And I was starting to think it might be impossible. Wednesday night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined walking into that hearing room tomorrow and facing a panel of university administrators who'd already been fed months of fabricated evidence. At 3 a.m., I gave up on sleep and started rehearsing my defense in the mirror, but my voice sounded weak and desperate even to my own ears. At 6 a.m., my phone rang. It was my mom. Honey, we have a problem. Someone called your dad's work yesterday claiming to be conducting a routine background check for your university financial aid. They asked detailed questions about our family's mental health history and whether you'd ever received psychiatric treatment. I sat up, instantly alert. What did Dad's HR department tell them? Nothing, thankfully. But the caller had personal information, your social security number, your student ID, details about our family that shouldn't be public record. Her voice was shaking. They're digging into everything. I'm scared they're going to contact your grandmother about that time you saw a therapist after your cousin's accident. The room spun around me. When I was 16, I'd had a few counseling sessions after witnessing my cousin's car crash. It was completely normal trauma response, but taken out of context and presented to a disciplinary panel, it could be twisted into evidence of psychological instability. Mom, I need you to call Grandma and warn her not to talk to anyone claiming to be from the university. Already did. But honey, what if they've already gotten to other people? Your old doctors, camp counselors, anyone who might remember you going through a rough patch? After we hung up, I realized the true scope of what I was facing. This wasn't just about the fake evidence anymore. Marcus's team was excavating my entire life, looking for any moment of normal human struggle they could weaponize. At 8 a.m., I met with the student advocate the university had assigned to help me navigate the Title IX process. Jennifer Walsh seemed kind enough, but within 5 minutes, I could tell she was overwhelmed. I've never seen a case with this much documentation, she admitted, gesturing to 3 thick binders on her desk. Marcus's legal team submitted over 200 pages of evidence yesterday, including witness statements from 12 different people. 12? My voice cracked. I don't even know 12 people who would lie about me. Well, some are character witnesses attesting to Marcus's reputation and mental state. But others claim direct interactions with you that they describe as. She flipped through pages. Concerning, inappropriate, or threatening. She showed me the list. Half the names I didn't recognize at all. The others were casual acquaintances, people from study groups, lab partners, someone who worked at the campus coffee shop where I got my morning latte. This person claims I followed him home from the library and took pictures of his apartment building, I said, pointing at a name I vaguely remembered from my statistics class. I've never even had a conversation with him. Jennifer looked uncomfortable. The Title IX office has to take all claims seriously. Even if some seem unlikely. Unlikely? I laughed bitterly. They're impossible. But that doesn't matter, does it? The damage is already done just by having them in writing. That's when she dropped the real bombshell. There's something else. Marcus's team has requested a psychological evaluation as part of the proceedings. They want you assessed by a university-approved psychiatrist before tomorrow's hearing. My blood turned to ice. Can they do that? If there are concerns about a student's mental stability affecting campus safety, yes. The evaluation is scheduled for 2 p.m. today. I walked out of Jennifer's office feeling like I was drowning. A psychiatric evaluation, conducted by someone who'd already reviewed all of Marcus's fabricated evidence. No matter how the session went, they'd find ways to pathologize my responses. Deny the allegations too strongly? Defensive and potentially delusional. Admit to normal relationship struggles? Pattern of instability. Show emotion about being falsely accused? Evidence of volatile behavior. At 1:30, I sat in the waiting room of the campus mental health center, watching other students come and go with their routine counseling appointments. They looked so normal, so unburdened. I wondered if I'd ever feel that light again. Miss Patterson? Dr. Rebecca Martinez appeared in the doorway, clipboard in hand. She was younger than I'd expected, with kind eyes that gave me a flicker of hope. But as we walked to her office, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. Sitting in the far corner of the waiting area, partially hidden behind a magazine, was Jake Morrison. One of Marcus's original lying witnesses, the one who'd claimed I'd shown him concerning text messages. He was here, 20 minutes before my evaluation, probably ready to provide Dr. Martinez with his own observations about my mental state. The trap was closing from every direction, and I was walking straight into the center of it. The psychiatric evaluation felt like psychological warfare disguised as healthcare. Dr. Martinez was professional and seemingly empathetic, but I could feel the weight of Marcus's fabricated evidence hanging over every question she asked. Tell me about your relationship with Marcus, she began, her pen poised over a notepad. I tried to stay calm and factual, but even my most measured responses felt like they could be twisted. When I explained how controlling Marcus had been during our relationship, I worried I sounded bitter. When I described the systematic way he'd fabricated evidence, I could see her eyebrows raise slightly, the same skeptical expression everyone wore when I talked about his technical abilities. These are serious accusations about digital manipulation and conspiracy, she said carefully. Help me understand why you believe Marcus would go to such elaborate lengths. There it was, the trap. If I downplayed his motives, my claims of fabrication seemed unlikely. If I explained the depth of his manipulation and need for control, I'd sound paranoid and obsessed. During our relationship, he always needed to be right, I said finally. He couldn't handle being the one who looked bad in a breakup. This is just an extreme version of that need to control the narrative. Dr. Martinez nodded and made notes. Have you experienced thoughts of harming Marcus or yourself during this stressful period? No, I answered quickly, then worried that responding too fast made me seem defensive. The session continued for 90 minutes, covering everything from my childhood to my academic performance to my coping mechanisms during stress. By the end, I felt like I'd been dissected under a microscope, every normal human emotion and reaction cataloged as potential evidence of instability. Thank you for your openness, Dr. Martinez said as we concluded. I'll have my report ready for tomorrow's hearing. Walking back to my dorm, I spotted Jake Morrison leaving the mental health building just as I exited. Our eyes met briefly, and I saw something that looked almost like guilt flash across his face before he hurried away. My phone buzzed with a text from Amanda, emergency. Meet me at the coffee shop on Oak Street. Come alone and make sure you're not followed. The paranoia felt ridiculous, but I found myself checking over my shoulder as I walked the 6 blocks to the off-campus cafe. Amanda was already there, hunched over a corner table with her laptop open. I found something, she said the moment I sat down. I've been digging through Marcus's files since Monday night, and I finally cracked his backup drive. She turned the screen toward me. It was a folder titled Insurance Policy, containing dozens of files with names like Phase 2 Academic Destruction and Long-Term Reputation Management. He's been planning this for months, Amanda whispered. Even before you broke up. Look at this. She opened a document dated 3 weeks before our breakup. It was a detailed timeline titled Exit Strategy that laid out exactly how Marcus planned to destroy my reputation if I ever left him. The fake social media accounts, the coordinated witness statements, even the plan to contact my high school, it was all there, written in Marcus's methodical style. But the most chilling part was the final section, post-hearing continuation protocols. Even if he lost tomorrow's Title IX hearing, he had backup plans. Anonymous harassment campaigns, academic sabotage, and something called graduate school poisoning that involved contacting law schools to warn them about my unstable behavior. This isn't just about winning tomorrow, I breathed. He's planning to follow me for years. It gets worse, Amanda said grimly. The private investigator his father hired? He's been building files on your family too. Background checks on your parents, your siblings, even your high school friends. Marcus wants to make sure you have nowhere to run and no one who will believe you. I stared at the screen, feeling sick. Why are you showing me this? Yesterday you said you couldn't testify against family. Amanda's jaw tightened. Because I found something else. Marcus has been secretly recording family conversations about this case. He's planning to use them to prove that even his own family supports his version of events. She paused. Including a conversation where my parents discussed your obvious mental health issues based solely on his lies. The betrayal cut deep. I'd had dinner with Amanda's parents multiple times during my relationship with Marcus. They'd seemed to genuinely like me, but now they were unknowingly part of his evidence arsenal. I can't let him destroy you and manipulate my family at the same time, Amanda continued. But if I testify tomorrow, he'll know I've been accessing his files. He'll find a way to turn my parents against me permanently. We sat in heavy silence, both understanding the impossible position she was in. Outside the cafe windows, normal college students walked by, heading to normal classes with normal relationship problems. I envied them so intensely it hurt. There's one more thing, Amanda said quietly. The psychiatric evaluation you just had? Jake Morrison met with Dr. Martinez for 30 minutes right before your appointment. He provided additional context about your behavior. My stomach dropped. So she was primed to see me as unstable before I even walked in. Yeah. And tomorrow's hearing is scheduled for 9 a.m., but Marcus's legal team requested a pre-hearing conference with a panel at 8 a.m. They're getting an hour to frame the narrative before you even get to speak. I left the coffee shop feeling like I was trapped in a labyrinth with walls closing in from every direction. Tomorrow's hearing wasn't just rigged, it was a carefully orchestrated performance designed to end my academic career and destroy any chance I had at a normal future. And Marcus would be watching from the front row, finally getting the complete control over my life that he'd always wanted. That evening, I was stress-eating cereal in my dorm when Jess burst through the door, her face flushed with panic. "We have a huge problem," she said, barely catching her breath. "I just got back from my shift at the campus newspaper, and they're running a story about you tomorrow morning." My spoon clattered into the bowl. "What kind of story?" She pulled up the digital preview on her phone. The headline made my blood freeze: "Pattern of obsession, local students' history of stalking behavior exposed." "They interviewed Marcus, his parents, and 5 students who claim you've harassed them over the past 2 years," Jess said grimly. "It's going to be published online at 6 a.m., 3 hours before your hearing." I scanned the article preview, my horror growing with each line. They'd found a photo of me from freshman year orientation and positioned it next to what looked like a police report. The article painted me as a serial stalker who'd been flying under the radar until Marcus was brave enough to come forward. "This is character assassination," I whispered. "Everyone on the hearing panel will read this before I even walk into the room." "It gets worse," Jess continued. "The reporter, Kevin Walsh, is a senior journalism major. I know him from my media law class. He told me someone paid him $5,000 for this story and provided all the sources." $5,000. Marcus's family wasn't just playing hardball, they were buying the narrative wholesale. My phone rang, interrupting my spiral into despair. It was my parents. "Honey, we're driving up tonight," my mom said without preamble. "This has gone too far. We're hiring our own lawyer." "Mom, we can't afford your college fund," my dad interrupted on speaker. "We're emptying it. This is more important than anything we've ever spent money on." After they hung up, I felt simultaneously grateful and devastated. My parents were willing to sacrifice my entire educational savings to fight Marcus's lies, but the fact that it was necessary felt like another victory for him. At 10 p.m., my phone buzzed with a notification that made my hands shake. Someone had created a fake Instagram account using my photos and was posting stories that appeared to show me outside various male students' dorms at night. The metadata showed the posts were supposedly made over the past month, creating a digital timeline of stalking behavior that never happened. But the technical sophistication was terrifying. The photos were real, pictures of me around campus, but they'd been altered to show different locations and times. Someone with serious digital editing skills was working around the clock to create evidence. "He's not doing this alone anymore," I said to Jess, showing her the fake posts. "This level of technical manipulation. Marcus is good with computers, but this is professional-grade work." Jess studied the images carefully. "The private investigator his dad hired," she said slowly. "What if it's not just one PI? What if they hired an entire firm that specializes in reputation destruction?" The thought sent chills down my spine. I wasn't just fighting Marcus anymore, I was up against professionals who did this for a living. At 11:30 p.m., there was a soft knock on our door. We both froze, looking at each other with wide eyes. Campus security didn't knock that quietly, and most students would text before showing up this late. Through the peephole, I saw a woman I didn't recognize, middle-aged, professional-looking, with graying hair and an expensive coat. "Ms. Patterson," she called softly. "My name is Victoria Chin. I'm Marcus's aunt, and I think you're going to want to hear what I have to say." I stared through the peephole at Victoria Chin, my heart hammering. Marcus had never mentioned having an aunt, and showing up at my dorm at nearly midnight felt like another elaborate trap. But something in her posture, the way she kept glancing over her shoulder, the tension in her shoulders, made me think this wasn't part of his plan. "How do I know you're really his aunt?" I called through the door. She held up her driver's license to the peephole. "Victoria Chen, Marcus's father's older sister. I'm a family law attorney in Seattle, and I flew in tonight specifically to talk to you before tomorrow's hearing." Jess grabbed my arm. "Don't open that door. This could be anyone." But Victoria continued speaking, her voice urgent but quiet. "Marcus doesn't know I'm here. His father called me last week asking for legal advice, and when I saw what they were doing, I couldn't be part of it. I have information that could change everything tomorrow." I looked at Jess, torn. Every instinct screamed that this was another manipulation, but the desperation in Victoria's voice sounded genuine. And if she really was a lawyer who'd seen Marcus's father's strategy. "I'm going to record this conversation," I said, pulling out my phone before opening the door. Victoria Chen looked exactly like an older, female version of Marcus's father, same sharp features, same intense eyes. She stepped inside quickly, immediately moving away from the window. "You're in serious danger tomorrow," she said without preamble. "Not just of losing the hearing, but of facing criminal charges. My brother has evidence that he's planning to present that will make you look like you've been stalking multiple people for years." "We know about the fake evidence," Jess said defensively. Victoria shook her head grimly. "You don't understand how deep this goes. The private investigation firm he hired specializes in what they call reputation restructuring. They've worked with politicians, celebrities, people who need entire narratives rewritten. They've been building a case against you that spans back to middle school." My blood went cold. "Middle school?" "They found your 7th grade teacher who remembers you having a crush on a boy named Tommy Morrison. They've reframed normal childhood behavior as early indicators of obsessive tendencies. They have statements from 3 different teachers about your intense personality and difficulty accepting rejection." I felt sick. Mrs. Henderson, my middle school English teacher, had always said I was passionate about my interests. But taken out of context, presented to a disciplinary panel by professional manipulators. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "You're his family." Victoria's expression hardened. "Because what they're doing isn't just wrong, it's illegal. They've hired people to fabricate evidence, intimidate witnesses, and hack into your personal accounts. My brother thinks hiring professionals makes it legitimate, but he's orchestrating a criminal conspiracy." She pulled out a thick manila envelope. "These are copies of the contracts my brother signed with the investigation firm. Payment schedules, work orders, specific instructions for evidence creation. He paid them $50,000 to neutralize the threat to Marcus's reputation and future. $50,000. I stared at the documents, my hands shaking. Marcus's family had spent more money destroying my life than my parents made in an entire year. There's more, Victoria continued. The firm has been monitoring your family's communications too. They know your parents hired a lawyer tonight, and they're already working on strategies to discredit whatever legal help you've found. How is any of this legal? Jess demanded. It's not, Victoria said flatly. But proving it requires resources and time you don't have. The hearing is in 9 hours, and by then, the narrative will be set. Even if you eventually win a criminal case against them, your academic and professional life will already be destroyed. She stood up, preparing to leave. I'm flying back to Seattle tonight. I can't be here when this explodes, but I wanted to give you a fighting chance. Wait, I called as she reached the door. Why should I trust you? How do I know this isn't just another level of manipulation? Victoria paused, her hand on the doorknob. Because Marcus did the same thing to a girl in high school. Systematic harassment disguised as being the victim. I watched it happen and did nothing because he was family. Her voice cracked slightly. I won't make that mistake again. After she left, Jess and I sat in stunned silence, surrounded by evidence of a conspiracy that seemed too elaborate to be real. This is insane, Jess whispered. They've turned destroying your life into a professional operation. I stared at the contracts, feeling the weight of what I was truly facing. Tomorrow's hearing wasn't just rigged, it was the culmination of a months-long campaign orchestrated by people who did this for a living. And I had 8 hours to figure out how to fight back. At 3 a.m., I was still awake, poring over Victoria's documents when my laptop screen went black again. But this time, instead of staying dead, it flickered back to life showing a desktop I didn't recognize. Someone else was remotely controlling my computer. Files started opening and closing rapidly. My browser launched itself and began deleting my search history. I watched helplessly as folders of evidence I'd painstakingly rebuilt disappeared one by one. Jess. I hissed, shaking her awake. They're in my computer right now. She bolted upright just as a document appeared on my screen, a suicide note, written in my voice, apologizing for all the lies I've told and the pain I've caused Marcus. The cursor was actively typing, adding details about my mental breakdown and inability to face the consequences of my actions. Pull the power cord. Jess shouted. I yanked the laptop's power cord and battery simultaneously. The screen went black, but the damage was already clear. They were preparing evidence that I was suicidal and delusional, probably planning to discover the fake suicide note right before the hearing to paint me as completely unhinged. My hands were shaking as I called the emergency number Victoria had written on the back of her business card. They just tried to plant a suicide note on my laptop, I said the moment she answered. They're setting me up to look like I'm having a complete mental breakdown. Jesus Christ, Victoria breathed. They're escalating faster than I expected. Listen carefully, do not turn that computer back on. Don't use any device connected to the internet. They've probably been monitoring everything for weeks. What am I supposed to do? The hearing is in 5 hours and I have no way to access any of my evidence. Meet me at the Denny's on Route 9 in 30 minutes. And take a route you've never driven before, assume they're tracking your normal patterns. The drive through empty streets felt like a scene from a spy movie. Every car behind me looked suspicious, every shadow seemed to hide watchers. I kept checking my rearview mirror, terrified that Marcus's professional team had escalated to actual surveillance. Victoria was already waiting in a back booth, looking exhausted and grim. She slid a new phone across the table. Burner phone with a clean number, she explained. And these are the only copies of the evidence I gave you. I printed them at a FedEx store and paid cash. Everything digital has been compromised. How is this legal? I asked desperately. How can they just destroy someone's life like this? Because they're not technically breaking laws that have enforcement mechanisms, Victoria said bitterly. Digital harassment, reputation destruction, psychological warfare, the legal system hasn't caught up to what technology makes possible. She pulled out another folder. But I found something they don't know I have. The investigation firm keeps detailed logs of their work for billing purposes. Every fake social media account, every fabricated witness statement, every hacking incident, it's all documented with timestamps and costs. I flipped through pages of itemized charges, digital evidence creation, $3,200. Witness coordination, $1,800. Social media manipulation, $2,600. They turned destroying my life into a billable service with professional invoices. The problem is, even with this evidence, you're walking into that hearing in 4 hours facing a panel that's already been poisoned against you. The newspaper article goes live in 2 hours. The fake suicide note will probably be discovered by campus security right before you arrive. My phone, the new burner, buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. We know about the late-night meeting. Your new friend Victoria should be more careful about her loyalty to family. Victoria's face went pale as she read over my shoulder. They're watching us right now, she whispered. This ends today, one way or another. That's when I realized the true scope of Marcus's plan. Win or lose, this hearing was designed to be the final act. After today, I'd either be expelled and destroyed, or they'd escalate to methods that would make everything so far look like child's play. The hearing room was packed when I arrived at 8:45 a.m., 15 minutes before the official start time. Marcus sat at the front with his legal team, looking composed and victimized. His parents flanked him protectively. The 3-person disciplinary panel was already seated, and I could see printouts of the morning's newspaper article stacked on their table. I felt like I was walking into my own execution. But then I noticed something that made my heart skip. Detective Morrison was sitting in the back row with 2 other officers I didn't recognize. Victoria had kept her word about contacting law enforcement, even if she couldn't testify herself. Ms. Patterson, the panel chair began. Before we start, we need to address some concerning evidence that came to our attention this morning. Here it comes, I thought. The fake suicide note. Campus IT discovered unusual activity on your university network account at 3:17 a.m. today. Unauthorized access that appears to show. Excuse me, Detective Morrison interrupted, standing up. I'm going to have to stop this proceeding. Ms. Patterson, you're not in trouble, but we need everyone in this room to remain exactly where they are. The room erupted in confused murmurs. Marcus's lawyer immediately objected, but Detective Morrison was already addressing the panel. We've been monitoring this case since Monday's court hearing. What you're about to see as evidence against Ms. Patterson is the result of an ongoing criminal conspiracy that we've been documenting in real time. She nodded to the officers in the back, who moved to block the exits. Mr. Chen, you and your legal team are under arrest for conspiracy, wire fraud, computer crimes, and perjury. Marcus's face went from confident to panicked in seconds. This is insane. She's the stalker. We have evidence. Evidence that our cybercrimes unit watched you fabricate over the past 72 hours, Detective Morrison replied coldly. She turned to the disciplinary panel. The laptop activity from 3 a.m. this morning? We have video footage of Mr. Chen's hired investigators remotely accessing Ms. Patterson's computer to plant false evidence. We've been monitoring their operations since Tuesday. My legs nearly gave out with relief, but Detective Morrison wasn't finished. Victoria Chen provided us with contracts and communications that led to a federal investigation. The reputation restructuring firm Mr. Chen's family hired is currently being raided by FBI agents in 3 different cities. This isn't just about college harassment, it's a criminal enterprise that's destroyed dozens of lives. As Marcus was led away in handcuffs, still protesting his innocence, he finally dropped the victim mask completely. You have no idea what I'm capable of, he screamed at me. This isn't over. My family has connections you can't even imagine. But his threats felt hollow now. The monster that had haunted my nightmares for months was finally revealed as exactly what he'd always been, a pathetic, controlling manchild whose family's money couldn't buy him immunity from federal crimes. The panel dismissed all charges against me within minutes. The fake evidence dissolved under scrutiny, witness statements were recanted, and my academic record was cleared completely. 3 months later, Marcus pled guilty to 14 federal charges rather than face trial. The investigation firm was shut down, and 6 other victims came forward with similar stories. Marcus was sentenced to 4 years in federal prison and ordered to pay restitution. I transferred to a different university for a fresh start, but kept my acceptance to law school. Turns out surviving systematic gaslighting and legal manipulation gave me excellent preparation for my criminal law concentration. Sometimes I still check over my shoulder or worry about anonymous texts. The paranoia may never fully fade. But I learned something important: the truth has power, even when it's buried under layers of sophisticated lies. And sometimes, just sometimes, the good guys actually win.